Today we have a mystery to tackle, one that I thought fitting to have a video all on its own, and that would be my theory on Rothias. I wanted to talk about this in my last video, but I decided it didn't quite fit into the theme of the last video, and also that it needed way more focus. And I think it would be quite interesting to get into this theory, so let me just go ahead and say what it is. My theory is that Rothias is potentially the original Beastren, and all Beastren are descendants of him. Now I know it sounds like a stretch, but I have some really good evidence to back this up. So let me try and convince you. I'm going to lay out the information that is relevant and then spin you a little yarn on how I think things went. Firstly, we know that children of Beastren and human couples are almost always Beastren, except for one notable example. Secondly, the records of the origin of the Beastren have been all but lost. Thirdly, Rothias is the oldest known Beastren in Dragon's Dogma 2. Fourthly, Vermund was once a Beastren kingdom. Fifth, Vermundians have a disdain for Beastren. Sixth and finally, the debris around Batal is adorned with iconography depicting a Beastren arisen, a human, another Beastren, and a pawn. Okay, so now with those out of the way, you will have a better understanding for where I'm coming from. So let's begin with the tale, and keep in mind that most of this was made up by me, in order to convey how I think things could have went, given what we know. Our story begins with a young child born to two humans in Batal. They named him Rothias. This child was healthy, and his parents loved him. But something about the baby boy was never seen before. The boy was unlike any other human. He had fur, whiskers, and claws. At first, the boy was shunned as a monster, but over time, this reaction dulled, and he was somewhat tolerated by the people. That was until a tragedy befell his city. The dragon. The dragon wreaked havoc upon his city, and Rothias knew he had to do something. He picked up a sword and charged towards the beast. And while all others had been unsuccessful in harming it, Rothias' blade dug deep. He had always been much stronger than his human peers. The dragon stopped for a moment and examined its wound, when suddenly the dragon's eyes glowed an eerie red, and its gaze became fixed on Rothias. It immediately pinned Rothias and uttered something to him that he couldn't understand. And suddenly, the dragon bored a hole through Rothias' chest and stole his heart. For some reason, the words of the dragon were now clear.
From this moment forth, thou art arisen. Charge and all.
Many months go by, and Rothias, now accompanied by a strange being known as a pawn, has tracked down the dragon. Their battle, if you could even call it that, was about to begin. It was over in mere moments, and Rothias had successfully reclaimed his stolen heart. And upon returning to his city, was revered as both king and god. He wed and had a child, who was curiously just like her father. Fur, whiskers, and fangs. It seemed that the gene that gave Rothias his unique appearance was dominant over that of other races. And over the generations, the lonely Beastren became many. And soon his city had cultivated a thriving population of both human and Beastren alike, eventually constructing many murals and statues in Rothias' honor. But despite defeating the dragon, Rothias' journey was not over. One day he was called upon by a strange being, a former arisen. Rothias was to take his place at the throne of the world. His will was needed. Rothias easily defeated this former Arisen in combat, and became the new Seneschal, as the former Arisen puts it. He knew this purpose was too great to dismiss. However, over the many years this grew tiresome to Rothias, so he descended to the land of mortals once more, to found a new kingdom of his own. The Beastren would migrate to this new kingdom, and live there happily, until a creeping madness took over Rothias' mind. A paranoia over one he refers to as the Watching One. Due to the association between him and his kin, they would begin to be shunned and hated by the human residents of Vernworth. The Beastren population of Vernworth would slowly dwindle, as they made their way back to their homeland, a city now known as Bok-Batal, where most of the Beastren now call home. In an effort to expunge the records of this origin, a future king of Vernworth would have all records regarding where the Beastren came from destroyed, in hopes to maintain control over the city. Eventually, all this bad blood culminated in a war to retake what the Beastren believe is their birthright, the kingdom of Vermund. Well, that is the end of the story. Did I convince you at all? You have to admit at least some of this sounds like it could be true, but I'm no lore expert and I could have very well missed something. So please take this with a giant, massive heap of salt, and feel free to correct me in the comments. So I actually did find something while I was recording and editing. It's this image. It's also a loading screen. It depicts what we can see as potentially Rothias defeating the dragon, presenting the head, and the people he's presenting it to are other Beastren. So, what does this mean? This means that either my theory is false, or what I likely believe to be true is that this is the bias of the current day Beastren. They may be wanting to think that the Arisen, the hero who slayed the dragon, was a Beastren like them. But in reality, they may not know that Rothias was the original Beastren. And if you think this is a weak answer of how current people could maybe change the past artistically, I present to you this image. Yeah. Starting to rethink it all, huh? Anyways, sorry, this part I didn't really script it or anything, so it may sound different. And I don't really care if the quality is good or not, because I just wanted to add it real quick. Bye! So, now let's go over a few things I wanted to expand upon from my last video, all of which relate to Rothias in some way as well. Second Talos. I don't think I was able to put as much emphasis on the second Talos buried near the geyser hamlet as I would have liked, as the significance of this is pretty big when you think about it. The fact that Talos heads towards the Moonglint Tower to stop Phasis, and that there's another Talos nearby that is fully destroyed, this basically confirms that what Phasis does there is not the first time someone uses the Moonglint Tower to enact a change in the world. And not only that, it almost implies that the last time it happened, they were actually successful in doing something at Moonglint Tower. Potentially, this could be why we see remnants of the first game around the map. It's little things like this that are very interesting to me, as on its own it's meaningless. But you add some context, and it becomes a massive clue as to the history of the DD2 world. Talos' origin, sort of related to the last one, but not really, is the origin of the many Taloses in possession of Rothias. Although I actually don't know if they heed his command, it certainly seems like they act in accordance to what he wants. So people have theorized that Talos is actually Rothias' pawn. The metal shell may be just that, a shell, meant to be piloted by a pawn. This would explain why there are multiple Taloses. However, I don't think that's the case, as his pawn is never actually seen in any way, even after Talos is brought down. What I think is that these are separate inanimate objects that are perhaps powered by Rothias' will, similar to how the elevator lift we used shortly after encountering Rothias. which would explain why the Talos in-game is powered on after Rothias learns of Phases' plan, even without Rothias coming into contact with it. Almost like Rothias' emotions willed it awake. The automatons were most likely created by Rothias due to his paranoia, as a sort of safeguard, to prevent anyone from altering the world and completing his cycle. Rothias at the bottom of the Everfall. This is just something small and stupid. It may be super obvious to everyone, but I noticed while talking to him last time that Rothias actually sits at the bottom of the Everfall. And it's just a cool detail. Since the Everfall is how we get to where the Seneschal is in the first game, it's almost like he's sitting at the location between both our worlds. No outro.
Bye-bye.